Another concern over international trade is the problem of predatory pricing, sometimes called dumping. The definition here is that predatory pricing or dumping is the practice of selling below cost. The idea is that you drive out the competition and then you can charge higher prices in the future. Now, this scenario has been alleged for a lot of competitors coming into the United States, like Japanese companies coming in to sell semiconductor chips or color televisions. This process is anti-competitive in the domestic market. We talked about it in the lecture on anti-competitive practices, where you can't drive out the competition and then try and take over and earn monopoly profits. Now, it's easy to find cases where foreign competitors gave U.S. firms great difficulties or even drove U.S. producers out of business. Color televisions and semiconductors give you examples. But predatory pricing isn't just about driving the domestic producer out of business. There's a second part to the story. And it is difficult or impossible to find a case where foreign firms then were able to raise prices and get monopoly profits. After all, they still had to compete with each other. For example, when Japan took a large share of the world car market and steel market, you didn't see an enormous surge of monopoly profits going to Japanese car and steel producers. Instead, there was a continued decline in their prices. It's often true in the administration of laws against dumping that it's become biased in such a way that any time a domestic firm is hurt by imports, they say, well, that must be dumping, that must be unfair trade. But that's not, economically speaking, what dumping is all about. Dumping has to involve not just hurting the domestic producer, but also earning monopoly profits in the future. And that second part doesn't seem to happen. Without that second part, just saying any time a domestic producer is hurt, it's unfair trade, that's a more or less overt method of just protectionism, raw protectionism. Another argument for protectionism is that it's sometimes claimed that certain products are vital to national security. And since they're so important, we shouldn't be relying on foreign suppliers or importing them from abroad. But the logic of this has always kind of escaped me. Imagine that the vital product is oil, and oil is an essential product to the US economy. Well, if it's so important, certainly it makes more sense to import as much of it as we can now and stockpile it, rather than using up all our domestic resources. I mean, if oil is vital, then why drill America first and use up all of America's oil? Shouldn't we instead try and get all the oil possible from other countries as long as we can and conserve our own vital resources as long as possible? If the vital product is a new technology, surely it makes sense to have the best available technology here. And using that technology helps us learn about it and perhaps be able to produce it in the future. It doesn't make sense to say we're going to deny US soldiers the best possible technology in the world because it's not produced in the United States. You want to use it and get to know about it. Moreover, the national security excuse for restricting imports is just very, very easily abused. Let me give you the two most vivid examples of abuse of this excuse. One is, I'm going to read you some congressional testimony. This is from 1962, and at the time, there was some discussion of whether or not to have import protection to shut out imports of scissors and shears from other countries. So, this is the testimony of B.C. Dushla, and he begins by saying, Mr. Chairman and members of the Committee on Ways and Means, my name is B.C. Dushla. I am Vice President of the Acme Shear Company located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I appear before this committee as President of the Shears, Scissors, and Manufacture Implement Manufacturers Association. Wow, huh? The only national trade association of domestic manufacturers of scissors and shears. The scissors and shears industry is a distinct industry and should not be confused with the larger industry and flatware industries. This bill could destroy industries such as ours and add to the unemployment problem. We have never requested or suggested that a complete embargo be placed on the import of scissors and shears. All that we have asked for and desire is a fair competitive opportunity, not an advantage. The workers in the domestic scissor and shear industry do not want to become wards of the state. They want to use their skills, which have taken years to develop. These workers are not interested in retraining. Over many years, they have developed a skill they are proud of and want to continue the work they are happy doing. Under the provisions of this bill, it would mean a reduction of at least 20 cents per pair at the retail level for scissors and shears now being retailed at $1 to $1.29 per pair. Manufacturers would be forced to close their doors and discharge their employees. The United States would then become wholly dependent on imported scissors and shears. We cannot understand how it would be in the national interest to permit such a loss. We would lose the skills of employees, the management of the industry, as well as the capital investment in production equipment. In the event of a national emergency, with imports cut off, the United States would be without a source of scissors and shears, basic tools for many industries and trades essential to our defense. The scissor and shear industry is one of the oldest in the world. It was brought to the United States from Germany at the time when the United States needed a new industry, and a scissor and shear industry in particular. Scissors and shears of all sizes and types are used in every school, retail establishment, office, factory, hospital, and home in the United States. Scissors cannot be classified as a luxury, gimmick, or novelty. Scissors are used to separate us from our mothers at birth, to cut our toenails, to trim the leather in our shoes, and used to trim the materials in every piece of clothing that we wear. They're used to cut our fingernails, to trim our mustaches, the hair in our ears and nose, to cut the hair on our heads, even down to the end of the road, when our best suit or dress is cut down the back so the undertaker can dress us for the last ride. Scissors are truly used from birth to death. They are essential to our health, education, and general welfare. I ask you, gentlemen, is this an industry that should be permitted to become extinct in this country? Well, you know something, people? If scissors and shears are vital, then almost everything gets to be vital.